This is the Peter Greenwood Show at the Edinburgh Fringe, and I have got a guest to my right. Could you tell me your name and what you do, please, sir?
Hello, I'm Chris Grace. I'm an actor and comedian.
How are you today, Chris? Are you well?
I'm pretty good. My voice slightly rough. You're getting the tail end of a little intense run of shows that I just did.
Well, I want to ask you about your show. It is called Sardines, a comedy about death.
Yes.
Let's talk about the show. What is Sardines, a comedy about death?
It's basically a solo show that I created to deal with 5 people in my life that all died within like a 6-year period. It's a comedy.
Now, you said those two sentences don't really go together. How do you make it a comedy?
Well, I just emphasize to the audience that my show is listed in the comedy section, and therefore it has to be comedy.
Right. So it's kind of like The Bear being nominated for the best comedy series. It's not a comedy series.
I will say my show is funnier than The Bear. I can 100% guarantee that.
That's
my show does not have as many montages as The Bear.
I was going to say, is there montages? Does Jeremy Allen White brood over you?
There is no 35-minute montage that we pass off as a show.
Wow, shots fired.
Shots fired at The Bear.
Wow.
Come for us at this podcast.
Yeah, come at us, Jeremy Allen White.
Well, maybe Jeremy Allen White will refuse to do this podcast.
He might.
Yeah.
It could go either way.
Yeah.
I will let you know what happens. So the show came about because, as you said, you lost 6 people in 5 years.
5 people in 6 years.
5 people in 6
6
years.
people in 5. That would have been crazy.
That would have been a lot.
5 and 6.
Yes.
That's just life.
It's a very broad question, but how did that lead to the show, and what did you want to make sure that you included in the show?
I wanted to just be as honest as I could in my thoughts about the show. I've basically piled up a whole lot of thoughts about death over the last 10 years since this stuff started happening. And then I had a version of the show in April that was not very funny. And then since April to August, it's been like, can I take the spine of the show and also make it actually enjoyable to an audience? And I think I have. I think I've done it. I cracked it.
You found the code.
I think so. I don't know. We'll see.
How would you describe the show for somebody who hasn't seen it?
It is I mean, in one sense, it's just a monologue. Like, it's just a monologue taking you through what happened. But it's also a sort of inquiry into a couple of questions. One is, can you enjoy something when you know how it ends? And the other is, does making art help at all? So those are like the 2 questions I wanted to answer with the show. And I think I answer both of them by the end. Yeah.
I feel like that first question, can you enjoy something when you know it's going to end, is the basis of a billion midlife crises.
Oh, yeah. And for me, like quarter life crises as well. But yeah, I mean, I think that you go through a period in your life where you sort of don't necessarily acknowledge what's going to happen. And then sort of life sort of forces you to, like, it makes it almost impossible to not acknowledge. And I guess for me, I'm sort of fundamentally a positive, cheerful, approaching things with comedy, humorous take on things kind of person. So I think that my view of these things is like intensely personal in terms of like my individual response to it. So really that's what the show's about. It's just my own response to death and grief, and seems like people are relating to it.
One of the things I've found when I've lost somebody is that it's not inherently funny, but there are moments of ridiculousness along the way.
Yeah.
Is that something you brought into the show? And is that something that was maybe difficult to bring in?
Not difficult. I mean, there's lots of, I mean, even around the moments when people are dying, there's things that are funny. And there's things that have happened that are funny at people's funerals and wakes and stuff like that. No, I didn't find any that difficult to put in. I would say any moment that I thought was in any way light, I sort of sought to include into the show. So yeah, just, because the topic itself is quite heavy, but I think I've got a rather light touch with it.
I want to ask about the audience reactions, because you said they've been responding positively to it. What has been the best and also worst audience reactions you've gotten?
I mean, the best ones are that people genuinely relate. They tell me their stories about people that they've lost, and I encourage people to share those with me afterwards when I get to spend time outside the show. And the worst one is the only worst one was someone who this will make sense in the context of the show, will make sense, but told me that I needed to lose weight.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was that Jeremy Allen White? Did he predict this?
It was him and Ebon Moss Bacharach or whatever his name is coming in.
That's so rude. I mean, you said it made context in the sense of a show.
Yes, it
sense
will.
in the context
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
show.
it will.
But that's rude, isn't it?
Well, people feel a real. I think because the show is very intimate and vulnerable, I think naturally people feel that they share that with me when the show is over, even though I haven't talked to them yet.
Yeah.
I mean, I've talked at them, but I haven't connected with each individual person. So I think there is, I mean, people just feel the openness to me, which is mostly like 99.999% of the time, it's great.
There is also it doesn't hurt that you're kind of a famous person as well.
My fame like varies. Fringe time, I consider myself a famous person around, especially around the Assembly George Square area. Geographically, I'm quite famous in like a 0.5 kilometer radius.
I have that as well. Like, see if you go past this black curtain behind us, nobody knows who I am. Right here, I am a star.
Yeah.
So, what is next for the show after the Fringe? Are you taking it on the road?
I'm going to do it in Los Angeles when I get back home. That's where I live.
Wow.
And I don't have current plans to tour. I'm still finishing touring my last year's show, which was Chris Grace as Scarlett Johannson. So that's actually touring through July of next year. And what I actually didn't know that I learned is because my pieces are tending to be finding homes more in theaters than in comedy clubs. Theaters schedule much further out than comedy clubs do.
Like, I believe they're already scheduling for definitely next year's Fringe, but also a couple of years down the road.
Yeah, well, in December of 2023, I was scheduled to perform Scarlett Johannson at the Kennedy Center in Washington in July 2025. That's how far out they schedule.
I want to ask a little bit about you as Scarlett Johannson.
Oh.
Where
You're just stymied.
Yes.
Why? What? When? Where? How?
Yes. Why that show? Why particularly Scarlett Johannson?
Well, Scarlett Johannson particularly because she took a role in a film called Ghost in the Shell that was originally a Japanese work, and there was a big question about like should she be playing this character. There were rumors that the studio had used CGI to make her eyes appear more slanted.
Really?
So it was a big she was sort of a focal point where this whole question of diversity in casting, and that was sort of the jumping off point for the show. And I had that idea, I had the title in my head for like 6 years without actually writing the show, and so it just was always just seemed like such a nice departure point.
Yeah, and then it all kind of came together around that. That incident.
It all revolves around that. With both of the shows, I have found a really delightful kind of like development process where I've got a couple of linchpins that I hang the show on, and then I basically work for about a year developing the show, and then even from the beginning of Edinburgh Fringe till today, which we're about halfway through when I record this, it grows so much here in Edinburgh. Like it's really. Obviously, it's good to get exposure and do the shows and stuff, but really the process gives back to the artist so much.
I want to ask, and I mean this in the nicest way possible, did Scarlett Johannson ever reply?
I've not heard anything.
No?
I mean, we have a couple of 2 degree of separation connections, so like I don't think I wouldn't put it past them seeing it, Scarlett or her husband, Colin Jost. And so, yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to do it. I don't really think it's that aggressive towards her, and the parts that are slightly aggressive in terms of criticizing choices that she has made, I feel fully empowered to make those criticisms based on people's previous actions, but also like her level of fame and success is there's an imbalance to where like I don't think that me saying 3 critical sentences in a show is going to like do much to Scarlett Johansson's career.
Yeah, she's going to be fine.
Yeah, she'll be fine.
Like she will be back for the Avengers at some point. It'll be fine for her.
Well, she'll be back to play Dr. Doom's wife or something.
Yeah. Oh, imagine if she's like the new Pepper Potts.
Yeah.
That'd be
brilliant,
wouldn't it? Where can people find out about you online and more about the show?
You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Chris Grace Comedy, or go to my website at chrisgrace.com. You can find out more about the show there. You can follow me. I do a lot of updates on Instagram. Oh, I also started a Patreon, patreon.com/Chris Grace Comedy. And I actually put a lot of behind the scenes stuff about the development of the shows in there. So if you're a person that likes to see shows as they grow, or if you, I put a lot of like very probably details I shouldn't tell people. Like, I just finished my 5-day run of Scarlett here at the Edinburgh Fringe, and one of the posts I'm about to make is I'm going to go through like all the finances of the run.
Oh, okay.
Because I think when I was coming up and creating stuff, I'd really be fascinated to know, like, how much money did you make on this? How much did it cost? So that's going to be my next thing in the Patreon.
And I think that kind of thing is so useful, particularly and again, I don't wish to be rude, but the Fringe is not the cheapest festival in the world.
Yeah.
Shall we say? I think that could be really useful for particularly young theatre makers.
Yeah. For example, last year I sold like 94% of my tickets in Scarlett, and I sort of broke even. Like I think if I really genuinely add up like every little expense, including like food and travel and all that stuff, that I probably actually still lost money because I'm coming from the U.S. and the accommodations, as everybody knows, are so expensive now.
Yeah.
So this year, doing Sardines, I kind of expect I will probably break even / lose money on it. It's worth it for the development. It's worth it for touring opportunities afterwards. But also, I did this 5-day run of Scarlett, which is like less expense because it's already developed and I'm here anyway. And so in a way, it was very exhausting to do Sardines and Scarlett for 5 days, to do 2 full 1-hour solo shows a day for 5 days. But on a very practical level, doing the 5-day run of Scarlett brought in revenue that will help defray the costs of doing Sardines. And so like a lot of it's now just sort of business decisions about, I love doing the show. The audiences were great for Scarlett, but there was also a factor of like, hey, me just doing the show tonight will get me 900 pounds. And like, that's going to go towards, paying a publicist for Sardines or something like that.
And I've forgotten what I was going to ask.
Oh, something about business?
Yes, I was going to ask about the business of putting it together. And as a performer, that must be invaluable.
You mean in terms of like learning how to produce? Yeah. So I've produced a couple of things here before. I produced a Voldemort and the Teenage Hogwarts musical parody, which is like a Harry Potter parody, and I learned a lot. I co-produced with some London people, and I learned a lot from them. And it is just the way of the world these days that you can be an artist, but you sort of have to also be an entrepreneur. So doing stuff like that. Finishing up the month, and then like after Fringe, staying in town. So I'll be going down to London to do more gigs, trying to get other work. I'll also be joining the Shambleton tour for like about 9 days as well. So a lot of it's just practicalities that you end up having to learn. You have to learn them because you have to survive the Fringe. And so it's a trial by fire, basically. You're going to learn Excel spreadsheets whether you like it or not.
One way or the other, there will be learning.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about Shambleton. I want to ask about so much, but we're running out of time.
Okay.
Chris Grace, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much.
Chris Grace, Sardines, a comedy about death, is playing in Studio 5 at Assembly George Square Studios. Times vary, so check edfringe.com as well as getting your tickets there. This episode was produced by @VCTariaA on Twitter, go say hello to her, and it was hosted by me, Peter Greenwood. Until next time, bye everybody, bye.